You don't just stay stuck when you launch a podcast without a plan. You actually go backwards. You're investing time, energy, and money into a show that's supposed to help your business, but it's actually draining it. And you keep telling yourself, I just need to be more consistent. But in reality, the way that you've built your podcast is broken. And I'm going to fix this for you right now. But what do I know about podcasting? I've generated over 100 million views for clients all across the world, spoken on stages in front of thousands of entrepreneurs, teaching podcasting and personal branding. Above all, I've been in your shoes as a podcast host and producer. So step number one, you need to stop thinking of your podcast as content. Podcast isn't about getting downloads, it's about turning the right listeners into buyers. So we've joined projects that are doing more than 50,000 downloads a month and generating next to no income. And we've also worked with clients that have got 500 listeners a month, but doing nearly 100K in revenue. One is randomly posting content for the sake of consistency, hoping that somebody accidentally buys. The other has a direct, repeatable system that moves people from listener into lead into client. And that system follows one simple structure. So we have top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel. At the top of the funnel, your episodes need to attract buyers, not just listeners. See, that starts with your episode titles. But your titles need to dig into your ideal client's pain points, addressing their fears, frustrations, and deepest desires. Instead of a title that says something along the lines of how to build a coaching business, try something like this instead. Why 92% of coaches stay broke and never break this cycle. One of them is lukewarm, just another podcast episode, and the other one grabs your ideal client by the throat and pulls them into your video, respectfully, of course. At the middle of the funnel, your episodes should pre-sell your offer. Your job is to shift beliefs. So break down why what they've been doing isn't working and show them the only path forward. Instead of how to build an online business, say the coaching model that scales to $50,000 a month and beyond. And while discussing this topic, you'll position your model as the vehicle that is going to move them away from their fears and push them towards their dream life. At the bottom of the funnel, your episodes need to drive action. Things like case studies, Q&A episodes, behind the scenes breakdowns. Instead of scaling your business, say how X client went from 3K to 30K months in 90 days. When people hear real proof, they start thinking, damn, I want that too. And suddenly your podcast isn't just content, it's a client funnel. And by the way, this works whether you do solo episodes or guest interviews. If you run an interview style show, this exact structure applies to how you frame your guests. At the top of the funnel, bring in your guests that attract the right audience, not just big names, but big names that bring in the right people. At the middle of the funnel, ask questions that dismantle objections your ideal clients have. Your guests can become the vehicle to reinforce your offer. And at the bottom of the funnel, every episode should include some kind of natural call to action, a mention of a process, a reference to a client success story, or an invitation to a free resource. This is what separates an interview podcast that builds a business from one that just collects interesting conversations. And listen, I don't say all this because it sounds good. I say this because we've done it over and over again. Now let me give you a real example. One of our clients, Morgan, was running a podcast like most people do, recording on Zoom, no structure, no clear plan. His business was doing a few $100K a year, but it was all driven off his own sweat and hard work. He was grinding to make the sales. He was barely filling a room of 30 people for his events. He was putting everything into his podcast and getting absolutely nothing back. So we helped him rebuild the system. Now, his business is making more every month than he was making in a year. He sells out multi-day entrepreneurial summits with over 500 people jam-packed into a room. He's collaborated with the biggest names in podcasting like Stephen Bartlett and Ty Lopez, and the main catalyst was him turning his podcast from a hobby into a client-generating machine. And this is exactly how we build profitable podcasts that bring in high-ticket clients. Some of the biggest names in coaching are inside our private community, dialing this in, executing, and turning their podcast into a predictable sales system. So if you're serious about making your podcast work for you, this is the game. You know where to find us.